Hello, how's it going, Yulia?
It's going really well. Hello, Joe. How are you today?
Good, thank you. Good, good. I think we're here to talk about a bunch of stuff. We met up a few weeks ago, and I thought you were really fascinating. So figured it would be fun to continue the chat on the podcast. So, for people who don't know who you are, do you want to give a quick intro?
Of course. Hello, everybody. My name is Yulia Pavlova. At the moment, I'm Director of Technology Innovation at Reuters News Agency. I have over 15 years experience in the area of innovation, R&D, AI, and ML. And right now I'm working in the area of news. And
Hmm.
a big part of my work is to work on introducing technology with AI and ML space to transform, to automate, to revolutionize news and media landscape. And a lot of focus of my work is on discoverability of multimedia content and on enhancing accessibility of our content. So I'm happy to discuss that. Also,
Yeah.
different topics around fairness, explainability, responsible AI, and how we accommodate for those topics in our work. Yeah.
Yeah. It feels like we're in sort of this interesting inflection point with AI right now. I think in particular with news, and obviously you don't have to get into specifics of what you're currently working on, but what are your thoughts around I guess the impact of AI on news and
Of course.
entertainment right now?
Yeah, of course. I can give you a short answer. I can give you a long answer. Let's start from the short one, and you can feel free to poke different things that you want from there. I definitely say that yes, we are in an area where when AI is really transforming a news and media industry, and we observed a lot of transformation in the past 5 years. Lots of really new core implementations happened across different types of content, across, let's say, video space, across text space. What we have observed in terms of translations, text to speech, like voiceovers, transcriptions, in terms of understanding of pictures and images content, that's been really transformative. And what I would say, whether we are fully there, I don't think we're fully there. I think there's lots of things we're going to see in the next few years. And especially if we would maybe poke into area of generative AI and content creation, I think lots of it is still like remains to see kind of how well we're going to utilize that, what guardrails we're going to implement. Lots of it is still relying a lot on human creativity and lots of human attention for quality, human attention to what exactly should be created. I wish AI was able to, let's say, just think about it and it's already created, but no,
Hmm.
it still requires lots of expert work.
But will you use the phrase "getting there," or what does "there" look like to you?
Um, that's a really good question. What does there look like? In inside my company, I'm running regular fireside sessions where I invite different experts from different fields to talk about.
Hmm.
And actually tomorrow I'm going to ask my peers about kind of, telling the future, what the future will look like. What I would
Interesting.
expect to hear, I hope what I would expect to hear partially is how much our journalists and our editors are really going to leverage what is possible right now,
Hmm.
how much of manual work they will be able to drop so they are much more able to focus on creativity and actually what they're the best at doing. Other thing what I'm also expecting to see, and I think it's on the border of AI. I would say AI and responsible. I would say with the responsible AI, and that's something related to UGC and something that I would call trustworthiness, because lots of the content will be able to be either subject to manipulation or fully created from the scratch. And I think it's up to us as people who work in the media and news to um, be able to actually explain to people who watch the news, who consume the news, that this content is authentic and you can trust that this is
Yeah.
exactly what happened. And what we see a lot in terms of shorts on TikTok and YouTube, I think there will be even more and more of that. And it will be really, really important to kind of to be able to prove authenticity and origins. Where this content coming from? What originality of it? Who or which org has been filming, and which and where and how? So I think those two things, first of all, is just to summarize, is the a tremendous shift in how editors and journalists work and what kind of boost of time and efficiency can be created. And on the other hand, how can we ensure that the content is authentic, and how can we support our customers and people who watch news around the globe or consume news around the globe, that they can be certain and they can derive their conclusions based on what they see and what they feel confident in.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, this is the big one, in my opinion. I mean, especially in an age where there's been, I think, a lot of skepticism about the accuracy of media, right? And so forth. And this has been going on for quite a while, I would say, over the last decade and more. And yeah, I have this sense that AI can either help the situation or pour gasoline on top of the situation, and I'm not sure which. But you're already in a very, I think, tenuous situation with news and media, where I would say the time to get it right would be now, because it's a bit concerning. I
Absolutely.
don't know if you feel the same way, but I read news, and I'm starting to hear this from a lot of people, especially uh, not to stereotype, but older people. They're always like, I don't know if I can trust the news anymore. And these are people that would consume the news all the time, right? And so then I think in the back of their head too, they're saying, okay, so with this generative AI stuff, it's just going to allow people to create whatever they want and call that news, or yeah. So the safeguards absolutely have to be in place. It's a tough problem though, I can imagine, to try and solve.
It it is, and it I would say it sometimes it feels like it's a cat chasing its tail. So where is the beginning? Where is the end of it? Speaking about older generation, I really, like, I would really hope that they can have access to the sources of the news
Yeah,
that are trustworthy, like that actually they can trust, that this is accurate, and also not biased. Because it's one thing when you create something or you modify something, but it's also important how you kind of what kind of emotional tone you put to something, because that also tends to impact how people perceive it. It's like it's is the glass half full or half empty in that kind of spectrum. If you describe in a very negative tone or sarcastic tone something that might impact someone's perception of it. Um, Speaking about falsifications, so that's actually a really there's lots of things that can happen in that spectrum. I think before the deep fakes, there was ways to alter, to modify, say, images by splicing them, by taking pictures out of the content and claiming, hey, this actually happened here and
right.
there, but in fact it originates from different place. There are so many things can happen. And sometimes you don't even have to modify a whole video, like video frames. You just have to maybe silence one word and the sentence will become completely opposite. So it's really important to tackle this on multiple levels. Let's say, understand, can we like attach this content to the source? Can we analyze the video stream and see has there been any tiny manipulations with the video
Mm,
frames? Has there been any manipulations on the audio? Because can be both, can be just one of them. So these things are important. I think the good news that there's lots of different tools and different models that can detect different types of manipulations. So you kind of have to work holistically and kind of have access to many of them to be able that they would flag for you, hey, this looks suspicious. For instance, the company where I work right now, Reuters, we have a fact-checking team, and they have lots of work with that spectrum of things. Yeah.
that's really interesting. What are some of those tools? Or are these proprietary, or are these available for
Uh, some of
anybody?
some of them are proprietary, some of them are open sourced. You can just download them. Let me see if I have them on my screen right now. I've been disabling most of my plugins.
Oh,
For instance, there is, well, just for speed of my browser.
yeah,
For
yeah,
instance,
makes sense.
there is Invite. It's one of the open services by Verify. I think it's open source extension. But you really have to understand that it has to work with frames, you kind of frame by frame understanding.
Mm,
There is an old project by Google Jigsaw, and they have engaged with different universities across the globe and use different algorithms that will detect some forms of manipulation, some pictures content. There are some companies, of course, out there who do detect, let's say, deepfakes in the videos and pictures. There is a whole list of them. So it's actually really interesting challenge to
interesting.
take a whole bunch of fakes from coming from different shapes and forms and understand which of the services are the right tools for you to work with.
Oh, that's really interesting. So you're heading up innovation
Mhm.
at Reuters, but like, so what areas of innovation do you focus on? Is it from a like walk me through kind of a day in the life of thinking about innovation and a news org because it's this is not a world I live in. So
Yeah, it's a really good question. So from from the day-to-day work, I think the interesting part of it is when I was, let's say, in the past, I was a data scientist, and I was really enjoying that work. And over the time, I became more and more aware that algorithms by themselves, they're fantastic, but they have to serve for the purpose. So it's really important to understand what actual problem we're trying to solve here, because it will dictate a lot about which model we have to choose and
mm,
all the underlying facets of the product that we have to engage with. Lots of my work actually is cross-functional these days, and I kind of like it because it gives me opportunity to work with journalists and with editors. And honestly, whenever I speak with them, lots of time I feel like I'm a part of the James Bond movie. How
oh no
they
way,
describe their work, they have there's so much things going on. When they
interesting.
film different event, because they go to film, let's say, coronation of King Charles, they go to film Oscars, they're gonna film really big events, like lots of kind of court hearings.
Hmm.
So different news in from politics to entertainment to sports. So we cover basically everything, and different editorial desks cover different subjects. Um, Apart from talking with our editorial stakeholders, I think lots of part of my work is working with the product team because we really want
Interesting.
to understand how, either kind of how can we help our editors to streamline their work, but also how can we cater to our customers? And what's important for news customers is, of course, how can they find the right type of content? Of course they can, but can they find it fast and can they find exactly the right moment? Let's say when there is political debates, when there is US election debates, can we find the right moment when one candidate at this event is saying this phrase, and can we exactly go to the part of in the video when this been said? Can we understand who are the people around this person,
Mm,
around the candidate, and who they are, like in terms of like who are say who are political supporters, who are newsworthy people. So I think that is very important for creating very informative content for our customers so that they can able to find exactly the right content, exactly with the right time codes. And that is really, this is really, really, it has to work really fast. That's the other thing.
mm.
The algorithms, if they don't work fast enough, it's not good. They have to work really fast because every second matters. The other interesting thing is, for instance, when I speak with people from our org who work with archive, that's really fascinating because Reuters, which I've learned, has archive which goes to, back century ago, like back to coronation, I think, of a Russian Tsar Nikolai
Oh wow.
II. So how to find the content, and some of the content is so valuable, but you need to be able to discover. Yeah.
Interesting. So maybe could you walk me through some of the high friction points right now? Maybe say for
Hmm.
um, like if I'm a writer or an editor, at Reuters. Like, where am I spending most of my time right now in terms of content generation and
Of course.
story
Well, I
making?
wish that I wish that well, if any of my peers, any of the editors watch us right now, please, and if I say something wrong, please don't get mad at me. I'm doing my best. Um, so lots of their work is so the work I think is very multifaceted, to be honest.
Mm,
First of all, they have to engage with so editors and journalists, they have to engage with each other. So they all stay aligned about which events they're going to create content on. So they need to know where the journalists are and which time content is going to come. And when editors start receiving content, they already know, okay, from this person we're going to receive content, let's say on, U.S. elections, something, U.S. election campaign, and they're going to start to annotate that content so they can tell what is it about, what do people say there. They're going to document, okay, let's say there is basically create a very detailed manual short description of what happens in the video. They're going to create metadata about the keywords, about topics. Another important part of their work is to create rights, because not all the content can be streamlined in different parts of the world. Sometimes there's restricted rights.
mm,
And of course, the creative part of their work is also to adjust the videos when they package it, let's say, for the customers. So what kind of content, from where they're going to crop it, how they're going to crop it, which episodes they're going to glue together. So it's very, very creative work. And if we can help to make the life somewhat easier by basically providing recommendations. Hey, this is what we think. This is what the algorithm thinks. You should maybe focus the most. Here was the most important critical moment of the event, or this was the most part where we have the most important person showing up in the video.
yeah.
So any recommendation on that, or let's say what I mentioned about speech to text. If we can automate transcription, right, which we already do, to be honest, when we automate transcription, it takes such a huge burden off their shoulders. If we can translate, which we already do, we
Yeah.
have a really massive translation engine on our company. If we can translate to
Interesting.
multiple language what is happening, that's also fantastic. If we can support our customers with identifying the key event right away, we can pinpoint them so that our editors can just say, okay, this is verified, this is approved, and then we can basically move the needle by doing that. One thing that is important when you think about innovating for a newsroom or innovating for editorial is really to stay really close to people who are working in the newsroom, to really understand where is the heaviest load for them, and what is the thing that we can really automate, because we don't want to take creative work from them. They are the experts in creative work.
Right.
But if we can help them with things that can be otherwise automated with the help of ML algorithms or AI services, for sure. Yeah.
That's interesting. I mean, I'm not a journalist at Reuters, but I do create a lot of content. I can say that there's a lot of manual stuff still, like video editing, for example, and audio editing. It's
A lot of
burdensome.
it, a lot of it is actually changing right now.
Hmm.
So I would say I was at the conference a few weeks ago for it's called NAB, and I would say really the the AI vibe across the news agencies or content producers is really strong.
Mm.
One thing that I would like maybe just to highlight, and Joe, happy to take this further if you want to engage on this topic, that if we think about like kind of information-based content and kind of creative news content or creative content, I would say they are somewhat different in a sense how they utilize AI or I would say AI services, or if we speak even about generative AI specifically, and how much control should be implemented within the tools that we build on the top of those AI services. Because just level of responsibility and a level of consequences of something being done
Mhm.
wrong or something wrong happening is quite different there.
Interesting. Yeah, let's dive further into that. So,
Sure,
yeah.
happy to.
I mean, what are some of the things that can go wrong?
Um, hmm. Well, if we put negative hat on and start imagining all the things that can go wrong. So just the level of responsibility, I think. If you think from the point of content creation, and if you think about, um, let's say, creating content for YouTube or for for TikTok, or if you create something for some educational platform, I think from the point of, I guess what you're going to be probably using AI services or generative
Yeah.
AI services will be for creating content, which I think you will be expecting that the content that's created has some kind of knowledge base,
Hmm.
and 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 I think the risk of something happening or the impact if of something being incorrectly created or incorrectly written relatively low. Relatively low. I would say it's negligible, but it's relatively low. If you think about news creator or news provider, you really want to be certain that when you use any AI tools, that the chances for false positives, let's say, if you speak about like metrics, the false positive labels are really low because you don't want to happen to tag wrong person or to tag wrong event,
Hmm.
because then your reputation is at stake. Also, if your customers, let's say, take some financial information which hasn't been accurately provided, they can base their decision on this information. So it's really, you really become responsible for, first of all, how people will basically act upon this information and how it will impact their whole perception of the world.
Yeah.
Because uh, if we think about not just about text, but about visual stuff, the visual stuff for us as humans is super powerful. If we, what is seen has can be unseen. So you've seen it once, and it's really remains in your head because just the way how the speed how our eyes and
Hmm.
our brain combined will transform information that we see visually is really fast. So we really have to be really certain that, first of all, we don't allow any visual content has been fabricated to be presented to our customers.
Right.
So we have really strict guardrails about it, rather than when you go to YouTube or TikTok. I don't have stats how much of the content there right now in terms of visual has been generated, probably a large part of it. And if it hasn't been fully generated, that probably has been altered or modified in some shape or form by now.
That makes
Yeah.
sense. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I was actually just this morning I was hanging out with a friend of mine. We were talking about just content creation and education, and which is more the area that I focus in, right? And so is my friend. But yeah, it was interesting too because we're just like, what's the yeah, what's the ways that AI can definitely help the workflow for educating people in similar ways that news stories can inform people. Yeah, but I always try and look at, okay, so like where does this thing break too? I don't know, I was trying to approach things from a maybe not a negative standpoint, but definitely from a working this screw up kind of standpoint. So there's always some parallels for sure because it feels like with education, if you're gonna say rely on generated content, for example, right, to say
Hmm.
make a course for you,
Hmm.
well, I don't know, how do you know what's right, right? So you're gonna have to go back through and
You really need to have a human expert to verify it.
yeah,
Yeah.
it would help, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what I found interesting.
There's,
Well, what I found interesting
yeah.
about the conversation was that it was we're working alongside one of the top people in the AI field, for a lot
Hmm.
of our stuff, and and it feels like even in that circle, the use of generative AI for education is still very much, I think, up in the air.
Hmm.
I think we're all trying to figure it out still. But I can see there's definitely parallels between what you described with news, for example, where the stakes are really high, like especially for an organization like Reuters that has a very solid reputation. Like you you can't have that many mistakes. That would be very bad. So
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And by the way, I know that you are instructor on deep learning AI, and you guys create amazing content,
mhm.
which has transformed education for so many people worldwide. So it's really
Well,
like it's taken as an ultimate source of authentic knowledge in the space of AI and deep learning.
oh
It's really
yeah.
important to preserve that.
Oh, it's real important to preserve that and to also preserve your credibility as being, the top, you know, uh, educator in that space, right? And so the
Hmm.
discussion I was having today was just okay. So if you were to fully automate this, because we're just like, okay, so if you fully automate the creation of courses, we suspect is going to happen is you're just going to have just a massive ocean of just really bad courses out there. If you were to do this, if you were to set up an AI agent workflow, we're just like, create script, create video, all this other stuff, and then here's your course, and just throw it out there without any sort of oversight. So the question was really like, what parts do you really want to automate from an agent workflow, and what parts would you want to,
Yeah, yeah,
keep that
absolutely.
human, yeah, in the loop. So,
It's interesting because I used to work in education as well. So I think between 2007 and 2018, I've been teaching students at the university. So I've been
oh, nice.
like a real, yeah, real person in the front of the whiteboard. And one of the things I've really like found what works the best for people is to really understand to kind of to have clear alignment with what they're going to learn at the end of
Mm-hmm.
this course with what actually is being taught during this course. And it's, I would say, in order to create a content, educational content that somewhat approaches those good kind of those standards, you really have to, it's almost as much creative work as of a human educator to invest into it, as much as what has already been now, how much time they invest into creating it now. So
Yeah.
it is possible, but from the quality perspective, you really have to think about how much effort it will take from human to adequately create instructions and also be able to verify has the content that I would like to have been explained, highlighted, is adequately explained on the
Mm.
level of difficulty and level of details that I would like my audience to receive.
Mm-hmm. Do you still teach?
I don't teach anymore, but if the opportunity ever presents, of course, I'm happy to do it. Yeah,
Oh, that's pretty
it's
cool.
been good times. It's been good times. Yeah,
When did you stop
lots
teaching?
of when
Yeah.
or why.
When did you stop teaching?
Um, I stopped teaching in 2019. That was
Okay.
just roughly the time when I was switching from a research and going to industry full time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
That happens. So
happens. Yeah,
industry's
yeah.
taken a lot of fine teachers away from from academia. So how did
Look,
you
yeah.
I was going to ask you how did you get into this the whole data and AI and ML
Mm,
space?
right. So I was actually thinking about it. I wonder if I ever left or if I ever been out of it. So I started in my education is coming from applied mathematics and computer science.
Hmm.
And the concept of data scientist, I think it has solidified around years of 2005, 2008. I think it was around that time. So the programs with the data science as such didn't exist with this type of name. So they were named differently.
Mm-hmm.
So things that we had, they were already having a really solid grounds for data scientists, things like data analysis, like numerical methods, like algebra, like calculus, like differential
Yeah.
equations. It all was there. And I think I've been using it along with my research work for a long time. And I would say what really happened was that I became much more passionate about working specifically in the area of data science. I saw that there is so much potential for, I saw that how much of, first of all, research work has been done in the area.
Yeah.
And I saw that there is so much potential to how we can transform industry with introducing an adequate and smart way so we can actually capitalize on all the knowledge that has been built. So that was ultimately my motivation to start shift towards industry.
That's super cool. It's yeah, so you're kind of more of the old school data scientist, I suppose then. So
Yeah, yeah, we can say so. And by the way, going back to the teaching, I really think that kind of teachers and good educators, we are not born as good educators. Uh, it takes lots of time for to kind of actually to gain the skill to teach and to explain things to students or to different audiences. And it's not only a skill that is really, really useful because like very often in my work, I have to explain, let's say, what we want to build from the point of the backend ML solution.
yeah.
And yeah, and very often I would have to explain it to people who might not have the same background in technology
Mm,
and science as I have. And what I found really, and all those, years of education and, speaking at the conferences, it's very relevant. And I also remember that people whom I explain in this, they might not be experts in data science or in machine learning, maybe not the experts, but they probably experts in something else. They probably much smarter in something else than, for instance, not my specific expertise. So it's also a part of respect how you can, and it part of responsibility of my side to actually explain things to different experts, to different expert domains of different experts, how things work and what I would recommend to do in one way or the other, and or why things even work.
how did you learn that? That's a really hard skill. I dare say that actually learning to communicate with maybe non-experts in your field, maybe they're experts in their field, and you're the non-expert to them. And so bridging that translation gap I found was actually way harder than learning technical subjects. I also have a math background and so forth, but I always thought that was the easy part compared to actually working with people and making them understand
Yeah.
what it is that you're trying to do. How did you figure that out?
Yeah. Um, I think a lot of it came with practice. I think honestly, I think when I was teaching back in 2007 versus 2018, I'm pretty sure I wasn't great from the beginning. I'm pretty sure I was not making it easy for my students back in the days.
Mm,
And I really, for instance, what I really like, for instance, when I was updating my education, I've been following, let's say, Andrew and G. It's really inspiring to hear people from ML community, how well people break down very complex problems into very digestible manner, so you actually understand what it's about. And it's one from the one side, it's practice and it's dedication, and it's being inspired by other experts in the field. Like honestly, like when I listen to your colleagues from deep learning AI platform, for me, it's more like a therapy. It's
oh,
it's
interesting.
so good. It's so well. It's really like when you listen to Andrew and G explaining some things. It's really nice.
Hmm.
It's really clear, and I think we need to. I think for us as a technologist, it's really important to be able to communicate about AI and AI innovation, AI advancements in a clear manner, so people feel that they understand.
Yeah.
Because the real problems is not, I think, happening in the with the with AI and how fast AI is developing or evolving is essentially whether we are understanding what's happening,
Mm.
whether we are, and some even on some high level, if we really are able to understand. And I would say it's really important for not just for us as an expert, but also for everybody right now in the world to put efforts to understand what is happening and where things going.
Oh yeah, yeah. So now more than ever too, it feels like everyone's interested in AI all of a sudden, and so
Yeah,
you're having to
yeah,
communicate with not just your
yeah,
own colleagues, but with a lot of people, um, which is different. I mean, because we've been through a few of these cycles before with machine learning. I think deep learning was the big one 10 years
yeah,
ago, where that captured at least that captured the attention of practitioners, I think, but it didn't really get into the broader commercial space or the
yeah.
consumer
I
space.
have
But
my I have my own guess on that, to be honest.
yeah, what's your
Yeah.
guess?
Um, like I'm really honestly, I'm gonna share it with you, Joe, and I'm really curious to see what you think about it. So, if you think about machine learning, like in the old school format, as you would say, there will be algorithms. There will be standalone algorithms, whether they are like regression algorithms, classification algorithms you choose. Then there is neural networks, and and that is still was something perceived as a domain where people who are very tech savvy, people with very hardcore math skills and very strong computer skills can succeed in. Then what happened, and I think that happened around, let's say 2015, 2016, is when cloud providers started to push a lot of the APIs. And one of those were services like AutoML,
Hmm.
when
Yep.
you can choose what kind of problem you want to solve, you ingest your data, and AutoML solution will give you recommendation. Say, hey, this is the algorithms that I considered would be relevant. With this fine tuning, you can achieve these results. So you basically, you as an ML practitioner, you can save lots of time, and you can create a service based on the algorithm that was recommended to you. It was compared against all other things. Still, you still have to have sort of technical skills to be able to access the platform, to create the data, to pre-process it, to ingest it, and to transfer to convert it from the platform, from that environment to your backend to do the ingestion of the model deployment. So it still required technical skills, even though it was already more democratized in the technologies field.
Hmm.
And then when you think about the recent developments with ChatGPT, for
Yeah.
instance, when it has became such a huge thing, so it enabled people who are not necessarily have a large background in mathematics or in computer science to create pseudocode, basically write a code, but in a pseudocode way, like write instructions that would be acting as a like to have a code running in the back end to solve the problem that you want. And I think that's became such a democratizing created such a democratizing environment, atmosphere, that it really allowed many people to start trying different things that they would be before be reliant on their technology teams to do.
Hmm.
So I think from that, it has really uncovered lots of opportunity, but things that maybe they didn't think it's even possible to do. But now people who are experts in some different domains, they're thinking, okay, actually this is possible. Why don't we do it? Because it gives us so much of transformational impact on our business and our industry. I think the challenge here comes with translating that into production, because
Yeah.
comes a lot of questions about robustness and quality assurance. But that's my Joe. This was pretty long spiel about about changes. But what do you think about it?
I think it's interesting you bring up AutoML. So my background's actually in AutoML. I worked at
Awesome.
what I believe might have been the first or one of the first AutoML companies in the world back in 2012. I think we started. And we got all the fun patents on AutoML and all this fun stuff. But back then it was interesting because you had this notion of the citizen data scientist, right? And
Yeah, I
so
remember
because we
that.
were supposed to empower the everybody to become a data scientist, because at the time data science was becoming the cool job, and at the same time, uh, I think there was a recognition that okay, choosing models, knowing how these models work, that's in the domain of these these data scientists we're going to put up on this pedestal. And but if we can democratize this and allow everybody to have that sort of superpower, that's great. The problem with it was the interfaces were really I think clunky. Pre-processing and building a model off of structured data sets, so rows and columns. I actually think that's the hardest data set to do machine learning on. Human generated tabular data for a lot of reasons, right? There's Lord knows how many inconsistencies you have in your data. It's all kind of every data set is its own adventure. It's all built on kind of a whim of like whatever engineer built this. So it's not the same as images, text, audio, and so forth. It's every data set's different.
Interesting.
But when you're trying to mathematically come up with some sort of signal in these data sets, like I said, every data set's its own adventure. You have no idea how many features correlate with your label, how many features don't, what's the cardinality of everything. I mean, a bunch of stuff. And back in the day, I mean, and we, so this is, I think we were more support vector machines and ensemble learning and that kind of stuff with maybe some trees. But this is like as deep learning was becoming popular. But then we tried deep learning on this. It's like this is actually worse than stuff like XGBoost, which was an algorithm that was coming out around the time. But so yeah, I mean, I always felt like that was hard, and the uptake of these types of solutions I noticed was like it was pretty hit and miss actually. You can probably get a lot of mileage out of say sklearn, for example, right? Or XGBoost became the gold standard for tabular data. It still is. Yeah. I think some vendors are trying to push deep learning solutions to it, saying, "Oh, you don't even need to process your data at all. We'll just do it for you." And it's like that's kind of crazy. But deep learning worked really well for unstructured data sets, right? And so I think that's where that really shined. But you're absolutely right. I think ChatGPT, for example, it just sort of it became it's a tool that when you put it in front of people, they just sort of get it. Last year around this time, what was it? Last June. I gave a talk at my my son was in 6th grade, and I was there just to talk about AI for an hour, and the really cool that was probably my favorite talk of the year. This is out of I don't even know how many talks.
Where was the talk? Where was it?
Just over at my kid's school, just out like a block away. Yeah, so I show up to the 6th grade class, and we were just talking about AI, and the first question I ask is, okay, so what do you think AI is? To a bunch of 6th graders, and they're like, give me some random answers and. I think there's a lot of confusion because like, oh, it's going to take over, right? That's consistently the answer I would keep getting. Then I'm like, okay, so, they kept hearing about ChatGPT, and I was like, oh, so I have it on my phone, right? Why don't we just spend the next half hour going through and trying to see what this thing can do, right? So let's ask it some questions. And so we did. And I think at the end of the day, they immediately got how this thing works, right? And sort of the boundaries of this tool and where it should be used and probably where it's not so great. And then I got up on the whiteboard and showed them how kind of machine learning works from a very abstract point of view. And by the end of that really helped them, I think, understand, okay, so this isn't like Terminator coming from the future to take our jobs and in our society, but it's really just another tool in the toolbox. But ChatGPT itself was super intuitive for a bunch of 6th graders to do. They would just type in stuff and get answers. And they had a lot of fun with it. And so, but if you're trying to compare that to the data science workflows of the 2010s,
it's very different.
You're going to show sklearn, or PyTorch to a bunch of 6th graders, they would stare at you.
Crickets.
Exactly.
Crickets will come.
Yeah. So I think that's what the power of it. It captured the public's imagination. Now everybody knows about AI. I mean, everybody does.
And you're right about the user interface, the user experience. If something is clunky and requires additional effort to understand what can I do with this, it's one thing. But if you have something that is very intuitive,
yeah,
like what you've been doing with your son, it's a very, very different ball game. And if you think about having or creating an AI backend product for a customer, you have to understand that it can have a fantastic ML backend, But if the UX experience is not there,
Yep.
then all the advancements of ML backend will go unnoticed.
Hmm.
That's why the work that we do is so multifaceted. It's not just the backend, which is a huge part, but it's also understanding what are we trying to do for the customer, what
Yeah.
problem we are solving, how do we know that the problem is actually solved, how do we understand the criteria, okay, this is good enough right now, and how we enable our end users or customers to engage with the system,
Hmm.
because that's when we can really that's when the true benefit of this innovation comes. And by the way,
Yeah.
I'm going to use your idea. I think I'm going to do the same thing for my kids' school and
Oh
speak
yeah.
with the primary school kids as well, because
Oh, that'd be cool.
yeah, my kid is also using ChatGPT.
Nice.
Yeah, and already at the end of the last year, yeah, end of the last year of the school, she images, created
Oh, cool.
images for basically for entire school staff.
That's
Just
fun.
knowing what they like. Somebody liked animals, somebody liked flowers, trees, and she would just sit for a very, very long time doing creative prompting and seeing, okay, how do I want this type of a dog, this breed of a dog, what kind of color, and what kind of position
That's
of the
awesome.
dog's body, in which environment, in which background setting, just fantastic.
That's so
Like,
cool.
yes, yeah. And she has entire calendar that she created based on her own creations. So we have a full, full house basically engaged with machine learning right now in some shape of or another.
Yeah, but to them, it's not machine learning. It's just a way to make images, right? And that's I think it's a.
But
But if you look at your phone too, like your camera, I mean, there's a lot of machine learning that goes on behind the scenes on that. It's insane, actually, how good the cameras are now. But you don't marvel at it and say, oh, it's like it's
you
AI
take it for
powered, right?
you take it for granted.
Yeah, and I think that's to your point. That's what makes I think a good AI or machine learning enabled tool is you don't even notice it's there, right? It just sort of does its thing, and just like electricity. I mean, I always say that we don't marvel at like, oh, the electricity. It's like that used to be a thing back when it was first discovered. I don't know when that was, a long time ago. Um, or the internet, for example. I remember when everyone was starting to figure out the web and getting online. But now, I mean, do we marvel at that anymore? Like, oh, this is a internet powered conversation we're having. I mean, it's like, no, you
Hmm.
just take it for
Hmm.
granted. It just does its thing, and
Absolutely.
that's it.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. So far, I guess from an innovation standpoint, then do you try and focus on removing a lot of that, putting a lot of that complexity behind the scenes, and just having let the interface do the talking? Maybe not talking in the
Um,
literal sense, but you know what I mean?
yeah, I think as an AI expert, actually I've been asking my colleagues in Thomson Reuters and actually other colleagues as well. Because with the with the emergence of generative AI, let's say, like, and capabilities that brings, let's say, like GitHub Copilot, coding copilots. What is the essentially does it how does it change our role as ML or AI experts? Because it does
Hmm.
change. And I think again it's what I would maybe be able to take from that is that it is really important to still be able to bring up this knowledge of the overall machine learning slash AI landscape, to be able to tell, okay, for this specific case, it's really good that we know now that this becomes a problem that we can potentially solve with some automation in the backend. But would the generative AI be the best algorithm for it?
Hmm.
Maybe there is something more cheaper, a faster algorithm, easier to deploy algorithm to do. And that's, I think, is also our role to understand what is the right tools for what kind of problems, and to be able to provide kind of holistic view over how do we know that the system that we have in place is working. So,
Yeah.
which basically means defining different, objectives, translating them into metrics that we want to measure, create an environment, okay, which data we want to test it on, how are we going to combine it with human evaluators, which is also important to understand that human experts are also on the same page with us. So that's a part of work that's been transformed in comparison to, I would say, 2015. But what do you think? How does it sound to you?
I think it makes a lot of sense, actually. Yeah. Um, Again, the news world isn't really the world I live in, so it's hard for me to say like, oh, that's pretty awesome. But well, I do feel like in a lot of cases, though, I think we're trying to shoehorn this generative AI into a lot of areas where I don't know. Part of me wonders, if simpler solutions, even just if else statements, are good enough for a lot of things. So, uh, like, and there's some cases. What I mean by this is there are some cases that I want something that's very deterministic, and I don't want something that's a
Yeah,
probability engine. And
yeah,
I want something that's very rules based. And Gen AI, at
yeah.
least as it stands right now, it literally generates stuff based on probabilities. Therefore,
Mm.
I don't know. The outcomes aren't always predictable, right? So
Yeah, you are touching a subject that I think we can talk for another hour
probably
if we have that hour. No, you're absolutely right. So what I would often tend to do, I would go, and it doesn't matter if it's news editor, it can be, let's say, legal expert or tax expert or any other domain that's out there. It's important that we need just to actually understand how does this expert work? What does she or he do? What do they do? How do they solve the daily problem that they have? Maybe you're right. Maybe there is actually direct mapping for what they do into the results that they want to get. If we can create if else or if then, fantastic, let's do direct
sure.
mapping. It's something that will work 100% of the time with 100% accuracy.
Yep.
Because something that we have to remember about ML systems, we need to evaluate how well they work. We use them when there is by the book. If there is no direct mapping between incoming data and outcoming data, well, that's the good candidate for ML system.
Mm-hmm.
If there is a direct mapping, if we can definitely say, okay, if this event happens, then we do that, then there is no need for ML systems,
Yep.
right? So that's one of the things. And the difficulty with generative AI specifically is what you just mentioned, that every time you reiterate the same task, the answer will be different.
Mm-hmm.
So it means that productionizing the systems, if we think about full automation without human engagement, becomes very difficult because you need to ensure robustness of your system in the production. And how do you do with the quality assurance? How do you do with accuracy metrics? It becomes a very different ballgame. So this is actually really, really important things already at the stage when you start developing something to have the end result in your head. Okay, how am I going to come to my stakeholders or to my end users, and I will explain to them, hey, this is how it works, and we know that this is robust, and you can trust the system.
Yeah. And also get people out of the mentality of like everything has to be AI now because that's the cool thing to do. So I don't know if you come across that, but everyone's like, well, is it AI? I'm like, I don't know. Does it matter? Like, so
Well, it's like, it's Joe. It's like in back in the days there was a joke. Well, what's the difference between AI and ML? Do you know? Do you know the answer?
no, not to
It's a
the
joke.
joke.
I tell you.
Yeah. What
So
is?
the difference between AI and ML is that if it's written in Python, it's ML. If it's in PowerPoint, it's AI.
Ah, I love that. It's very true. Still true.
Still true.
Still
Yeah,
true.
still true.
Well, awesome. It's been good chatting with you. Well, maybe I have to have you back on. We can talk about the thing that we were going to talk about for an hour, but we're running out of time. So,
Of
um,
course, of course. Yeah,
yeah.
it was a
Uh,
pleasure.
yeah. Thanks. Yeah. Likewise. Yeah. Great combo. For people, I guess, how can people find out more about you? you on any social medias or?
Um, I think right now I'm quite present on LinkedIn, so you can search my first name, last name, and I have a PhD, so that's one of the titles you can see there in my profile.
Okay.
I have two PhDs, by the
Oh,
way,
you do?
which I
Wow.
I do have two
Do you have like
PhDs. I often
PhD? Like,
No, I think just one in the title, just one is enough. And people ask me sometimes, why do you have two? And I'm just saying, I don't know,
oh,
I
that's
felt
funny.
passionate about doing research and just did two. But honestly, if anybody out there considering doing PhD, one is enough. Don't do more than that. It's enough. So LinkedIn is maybe the most frequent platform for the social media that I visit.
Cool.
You can find me there.
Oh, I'll
Yeah.
add to the show notes. Well, thanks, Yulia. Pleasure talking to you.
Thanks so much, Joe.
Yeah, of course.
Have a great rest of your day, and
Yeah, you
we'll
too.
speak later.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.